afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining again. And I hope the next 2 days are going to be a learning curve for everyone. Just to set the context, CleverTap is organizing Reimagine Growth for the 5th edition. It's CleverTap's flagship Growth Masterclass, a 2-day virtual event that is curated exclusively for marketing, product, and growth leaders who want to learn the growth secrets that are driving success for today's leading mobile brands. Before we begin today's sessions, I would like to take a moment to thank our partners, Adjust, Rocketium, and VWO. I'd also like to thank our community partners, growth folks, and the product folks. So what can you expect today? So day one of Reimagine Growth is going to focus on accelerating mobile user growth and maximizing user lifetime value. We have experts from Adjust and Cashkaro who will be focusing on customer acquisition and retention respectively. Yatin from Cashkaro team is here, who will be driving the retention session. And to begin with today's session, we have Manish Wali from the Adjust team, who's going to talk about mobile app trends for 2021 and customer acquisition best practices. So any questions that you guys have, please feel free to hit your questions in the Q&A box. And without wasting any further time, I'll hand it over to you, Manish. Good luck for your session.
Thank you so much, Srini. A very warm welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Manish. I work as Head of Inside Sales for APAC at Adjust. In today's session, we are going to be talking about an intro to the world of app marketers. We will also dwell down into the 2021 App Trends report, which gives us some really great insights. And last but not the least, we will also understand some of the user acquisition basics and best practices. Now, as an app marketer or mobile marketer, I know everyone is passionate about growing their apps. And with the right set of tools and with the right set of data, this goal is not hard to achieve. However, is this goal that easy to achieve as it sounds? The answer is it's more complex. And the complexity comes with the world of modern user journey. So if you see today, a user journey has increasingly become very complex and complicated. There are a number of ways in which a user can actually get to your app, download it, and there are numerous touch points that come along the way. And the journey doesn't stop there. Imagine a user downloading your app. As an app marketers, some of the things which you have to consider is what actions are they going to take inside the app? What if they uninstall the app? What kind of retargeting campaigns you have to plan? So the modern user journey and understanding that complex elements is very crucial for an app marketer. And to top it off, it's not just about the modern user journey, but marketers have to be focused on more channels to engage and reach their users. Today, as per one of the surveys, there are close to around 16 channels which marketers have to use in order to engage and reach their target users. So keeping these complexities in mind, another crucial layer which comes to the table is how do we protect our data and user data? As a mobile marketer, there are multiple data privacy laws that have come into the picture. With iOS 14 and iOS 15 release from Apple, app marketers have to think about protecting the user data and their data, and it is a business critical issue right now. And keeping all these challenges in mind, Adjust was founded in 2012 with just one aim. We want to make sure all mobile marketers are effective. And we enable them to be smarter with the help of right data analytics and tools. We help them to get a lot of insights around their return of investments by streamlining analytics and optimizing their campaigns, helping them optimize their campaigns, and adding a robust layer of data security and privacy to the table as well. And on that note, from Adjust, we work with close to around 50,000 apps worldwide. They trust us by partnering with us. And what we observed is something which I would like to present to you. The App Trends report for 2021, and we're going to see some of the snippets from this report. Now, as per the report, the app trends and the user habits saw a drastic change during 2022 and 2021. I mean, during the lockdown, the world actually turned towards mobile and entertainment on their mobile devices. The time they spent on their mobile devices increased. The kind of internet penetration that we saw in APAC and especially markets like India was huge. So let's kind of understand what were those industry trends and predictions. So one of the key things was APAC is going to remain the forefront of attention when it comes to app economy. In fact, APAC leads the world in mobile app growth in general. It's at #1 spot. And APAC itself kind of accounts for 64% of global mobile app downloads, which is a huge number. And the future prediction is that close to around 45% of mobile app market growth will actually come from APAC in the next 2 to 3 years. And if we talk about if we talk about verticals, 60% of the mobile gaming revenue actually came from APAC in year 2020. And we are going to see a considerable change and growth in the same going forward. And if I have to talk about top 3 takeaways from the report that we published, installs and sessions in APAC actually have grown from by 31% to 54% respectively from 2020 to 2021 and are going to continue to grow in 2022, which is a great sign. And in fact, all the verticals grew. And we analyzed all major countries in APAC. In fact, to stand out, fintech and hyper-casual gaming were the ones which actually had a huge spike and will show a sustained growth as we enter 2022. And last but not the least, retention rates were consistent as well. Despite the pandemic, the Q4 actually saw an average increase of 5.68%. And if we drill down further into the installs data, so what we did is we kind of did an analysis of different countries in APAC, and a couple of countries which definitely stands out during this period were Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. In fact, Singapore saw 49% growth in installed data, and so did Vietnam with close to around 43%. And there are countries like India and Indonesia with considerable internet user population. We did see some stabilization coming into the picture, but growth is going to be there going forward in 2022 as well. And if we talk about verticals, what we saw was hyper-casual gaming was one of the verticals which saw a huge jump in 2020 and 2021 as well. And that trend is going to continue going forward as well. And in fact, followed very closely are fintech and e-commerce. So if we talk about the verticals, hyper gaming, along with fintech and e-commerce have been the strongholds in APAC. And if we drill down a little bit about the growth, the fintech growth that we saw came actually from countries like Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, and India. And if you can see on the chart right now, close to around 89% growth from markets like Indonesia, close to around 70% growth year on year from previous year 2020 from Singapore and markets like South Korea. And this is going to sustain, and this is actually going to continue as a trend in 2022 year as well. Followed by e-commerce install. And if we look at e-commerce, as it's called the green field vertical, which is going to continue to stabilize and grow. And a couple of countries which we saw the data kind of stabilizing and tremendous growth in year 2020 was Japan and South Korea. And we are kind of predicting that this boost is going to continue towards 2020 as we enter 2022 as well. And when we talk about gaming, which has been the new entrant in the market during the pandemic, I mean, countries like Singapore, Japan, Vietnam, and South Korea saw a tremendous growth from 2020 as we end the year in 2021. In fact, Singapore was one country which stood out, and there are close to around 80% growth in terms of gaming installs that happened in Singapore, along with Japan and Vietnam. And we see the same trend moving forward as we enter 22. There will be a little bit of stabilization that will come, but gaming vertical is going to grow in APAC in the next 2 to 3 years as well. And within gaming, as we talk about the installs, the next aspect that we're going to be discussing would be sessions. And to look at the sessions data, the sessions actually had a very interesting spike if you see. In year 2020, Japan and South Korea market actually led in terms of markets where we saw tremendous. I mean, Japan had close to around 101% spike in their sessions data. And one market which actually stood out and is going to kind of be at the forefront of leading the sessions data will be Vietnam. And in fact, it's almost the inverse. So Vietnam actually has grown by 12% in 2021 from year 2020. And that trend is going to continue again for year as we enter 2022. And talking about certain verticals which we saw growth, as earlier discussed, fintech, e-commerce, hyper-casual and non-hyper-casual gamings, these are the verticals which are going to continue to grow. And in fact, fintech, we have seen a stable increase in sessions growth, close to around 45% growth in sessions data, which is again an interesting number to kind of look at. And with the current market scenario in Southeast Asia, India, and in general in APAC, this trend will continue for 2022. And if we go a little bit deeper in understanding the fintech sessions growth, the markets which in fact have led the fintech sessions growth are Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, and Vietnam. And it's mostly around the fact that the fintech had an excellent year 2020, and based on that growth, the users have been on the forefront of spending more time on apps within that vertical. And again, reiterating the fact that the trends that we see from 2020 to 2021 are going to continue for year 2022 and going forward. And if we give a little bit of glimpse around hyper-casual gaming sessions for growth, we have seen countries like Indonesia, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Thailand, and Vietnam kind of on the forefront of that growth and having a stable outlook towards sessions growth going forward. And really catching up to that is India as well, followed closely. And with that note, when it comes to sessions data, I would like to segue towards non-hyper casual gaming sessions. And we have seen a significant amount of growth in countries like Singapore, Vietnam, and even Japan for that matter. And if you can see, Singapore and Vietnam have kind of shown a huge spike when it comes to people spending a lot of time during gaming sessions in the year 2021. And this same trend is going to continue in 2022 as well. So to conclude, one of the key elements of APAC App Trends report, it is very important for marketing teams to understand the nuances of the verticals and the sub-verticals where they belong, because that will be the crucial factor for them to create that market differentiation for their apps. Moreover, I mean, more people in APAC are turning towards mobile, and we have seen that kind of happen during the pandemic era. And in fact, people are using mobile devices for entertainment and daily tasks more than ever. And also the third point would be the critical aspect of understanding your user acquisition strategies and being laser focused on the behaviors that lead to high lifetime value of your users. And that actually gives us a good segue to talk about what are those best practices around user acquisition strategies which we would like to recommend. The first and the foremost aspect of building a robust user acquisition strategy is understanding your user life cycle. Right from the stage where the journey starts, from consideration to evaluation for them, and eventually they buying and kind of staying a loyal customer. As an app marketer, it is very important for you to understand and plan the activities of user acquisition, conversions, and re-engaging them. Right from your app install campaigns to app retargeting campaigns and driving your app engagement, this journey is going to be very crucial for all app marketers looking forward to have a robust user acquisition strategy. And to top it off, when we talk about customer value, it's a journey, it's a step-by-step process. So right from, if you look at the time and customer value plotting on the graph, things like retaining your new visitors, encouraging your new frequent visitors, or making sure that your users are spending more time on the app, which in fact drives more conversions. These are some of the KPIs that you have to keep in mind. Your retention rate, frequency of the visit, time the user spends per user, and the conversion rates. So to understand that is going to become very crucial for app marketers to plan a robust user acquisition strategy. And as we talked about customer value, one of the most important KPIs, or I would say most important factors, is going to be LTV, your lifetime value. And why is it important? The reason why it is important is because it allows companies to track in terms of how much revenue can they expect from their users to generate over a period of life cycle. And this is something which is going to be very crucial. And it is important to understand and determine your customer segments. Which of your users are more valuable to you? Can you highlight which of users are worth the effort and money to go after the LTV? And followed by the calculations. There might be some different calculation factors which may come into the picture according to your app monetization calculations. But in order to kind of do that, these will be the 4 pillars of understanding why LTV is important for app marketers. And if your question is, how do we master the lifetime value? The key things to keep in mind is LTV is a dynamic metric. As churn rates rise and fall, so does your LTV. It's like, I compare it to a stock market wherein, depending on how the churn rates are going to be there, this value is going to change. So it is challenging to attribute values to individual users. However, for calculating your LTVs, it will be dependent on the events that will happen within your app. Now, how do you get started with mastering the LTV? The first point which we would recommend would be make sure that your in-app analytics are correctly measured for your revenue and retention KPIs. You definitely will have to focus on group users, which is in the form of cohorts, which reflect a particular behavior, so that it allows you to get a clearer picture and user-level LTV analysis. And then, last but not the least, decide on a formula which will allow you to calculate your ROI. And if your question would be that, Manish, what would be some of the best ways to implement a lifetime value? So the 2 recommendations that we would love to make would be, number 1, segmentation. You will have to identify the user segments that are the most valuable for you and optimize your campaigns to reach out to them or engage them. So segmentation is going to be a very crucial factor to get a robust LTV structure in place, and then followed by automation. Today, if you ask any app marketer, one of the challenges that they face actually is, how do I automate all my campaigns? How do I set my budgets? So automation is going to be one of the important aspects which allows you to set your budget rules based on your LTV calculations, and also allows you to see patterns to make sure that user acquisition strategy gives you the projected LTV. And followed by the metrics. And when we talk about user acquisition and cost acquisition metrics, these terms are not new to you. Whether it is your CTR, whether it is your cost per acquisition, cost per install, or average revenue per user, these will be some of the metrics which you will have to keep in mind as an app marketer. Followed by re-engagement and retention metrics. Again, retention rates, churn rates, uninstall data, and conversion rates will be some of the metrics as an app marketer which you would be working day in and day out while running your campaigns. And to top it off, I believe the cost tracking tips to minimize headaches, right? Like with markets, especially in APAC, we definitely would want to get the best ROI when it comes to running our campaigns. So how do we make sure that we are tracking cost in the best possible manner? So the recommendation from our side is get user level data whenever it's possible. As you will be working with multiple partners, get as much information from them around the ad cost. If you want to use a tool that centralizes all your cost data in one place, Adjust does have that solution in the offering, and you can actually have aggregated cost data on your dashboard. And in fact, it will be available for your business intelligence tools via callback and a CSV export. And last but not the least, keep all your IOs centralized so that you can cross-reference when required when working with different partners. Now, apart from that, what we also recommend when it comes to user acquisition strategies is creative best practices. And a lot of you would actually agree that creatives actually give you a lot of edge against your competitors. And let's see how. When we are talking about making most of your creatives, right, we have a lot of options available in the market. Let's take, for example, banner ads. It is, a space which is at the premium. You have to kind of consider about having appealing graphics and clear call to action. That's the recommendation that we would like to give. Today, the attention span of a user on an ad and a clear call to action would be a crucial factor for you to kind of have a robust user acquisition strategy. There are interstitial ads available. However, to some users, they're quite intrusive. So depending on your targeting and what exactly are you looking at, it would be recommended to actually opt in for something in the form of expandable ads. It is almost the similar real estate when it comes to interstitial ads, but it is less intrusive. The two-step ad open process makes A/B testing also a good segue for you, where you can see which ads are performing and which ads are not performing and divert the budgets accordingly. And then, last but not the least, your native ads. It's mostly like least intrusive of all the ads. So the recommendation which we would love to make would be, do your A/B testing and go less intrusive when it comes to your creative ad strategy. And if we talk about the market penetration in terms of how internet today is available, even in tier 1, tier 2 cities in APAC, whether we talk about India or we talk about other markets out there, the key element would be to drive a rich experience. And video ads have kind of that advantage with them with a higher CTR and LTV. However, the only thing which we would recommend is be mindful of the fact that sometimes audio doesn't work or they have not enabled it. So focus on visuals, which kind of builds that story for your users. And for hyper casual gaming and gaming, playable ads are a great segue to get your users targeted. And just to kind of summarize and bring us back to the very fact that what are some of those immediate strategies that we can implement for our user acquisition journey? The first and foremost, the recommendation that we would love to make would be focus on relevant creatives. If you can make it as customized and relevant for your users, the better they're going to work. Incentivize strategically. So if you're talking about your user acquisition strategy, maybe creating a reward kind of a methodology for your ads so that users feel that installing an app, there is something which is targeted and they get an incentivized feeling about the same, that will become a very crucial factor. And then reactivate the churned users. So in fact, how your retargeting campaigns are going to work, how your re-engagement campaigns are going to work are going to be also very crucial, followed by understanding your users creating cohorts which will allow you to group them together and target them. And last but not the least, it would also be essential for you to do and track A/B testing when it comes to campaigns, when it comes to creatives, to see how exactly those campaigns are performing. And accordingly, you can utilize that data and encourage the funds or your budgets to be allocated for the right campaigns. With that note, I will take a hard stop here. Thank you so much for joining in. If you have any questions for me, I would love to answer a question currently for you.
Thanks, Manish. I think a lot of interesting insights into mobile app trends for this year, and I'm sure our audience will have a lot of key takeaways for building their growth playbook for the next year as well. A couple of questions here for you. One of our audiences wants to understand what is the difference between hyper casual gaming and non-hyper casual gaming.
Sure, absolutely. So, can you give me both the questions so that I can answer both?
Sure. The second one is more to do about Adjust. So they want to understand how can they use Adjust and increase their retargeting and re-engagement strategies.
Got it. So let me start with the second question first. So which is basically about how can Adjust help marketers with the retargeting, re-engagement campaigns. So we do have an in-house solution called Audience Builder, which is part of our automation solution suite, and it's basically to enable the app marketers to create precise dynamic segments and based on unlimited conditions. So we do have an in-house tool which is called Audience Builder. That is something which can be used for retargeting and re-engagement campaigns in general. Okay. And for example, the difference in terms of the hyper casual and the regular games is that hyper casuals are free games that users can play for a short period of time and multiple times. So that's how they are. And the other mobile games are more in terms of mid-core strategy level games. So that's the difference. So hyper casual is more like for a shorter period of time, they play it multiple times. So that's the difference. For example, Candy Crush in general, which people had problems in terms of the ads being shown to them. So that's an example there.
Got it. Thank you, Manish. For our audience, if you have any more questions for Manish, he's going to be there for the next half an hour as well. Keep your questions coming. He'll answer your questions through the audience chat. And moving forward, we have Yatin here. Yatin, can you hear me?
Thank you, Srinivas, and thank you everybody for joining this call today. I'm not really sure if I'll be able to kind of give you tips on mastering the retention. Everybody is learning and so am I. So basically, whatever tidbits I have collected over my 10 years of experience into this domain, I will be sharing some tidbits from there. And I hope that those are helpful for you. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. Guys, so to begin with, all of you, of course, understand and appreciate that at the end of the day, if a bucket is leaky, it does not need more water. We need to fix the holes, right? So how do we kind of do that? What are the various areas in which we can have some sort of an impact so that we are able to fix those holes? That's what I'm going to cover in this session. But before I go there, I certainly want to draw your attention towards why is retention important? That's kind of a rhetorical question. All of us do understand the importance of retention. However, one core thing which I wanted to kind of convey for sure is that retention actually lifts all other works. So whether we are talking about virality or it is monetization, improving LTV, getting more money available for the acquisition team to drive more signups or installs or whatever the mode of acquisition you follow, all of that is basically taken care of by better retention. And let me kind of give you a quick glimpse of how this plays out. I'm going to cover a scenario just to kind of set the context, right, where we are comparing two companies, company A and company B. The difference between, so Assume that both of them are in the similar domain, they have similar cost per sign up, similar revenue per user per month, but company A is working on fixing retention, and company B is, who's flushed with cash, is basically doubling the acquisitions per month. Now, what happens in these two scenarios? Yeah, let's say if we play this data for some time, so for 6 months, obviously the company B, which is actually acquiring twice the number of users with respect to company A, the numbers look better in case of the company which is acquiring more users. But as soon as this time period crosses, and if we look at a long-term story, we basically realize that company A, which is actually spending time to fix their retention, is doing way better in terms of their MAUs, in terms of the revenues, and in terms of the profit margins as well. But same fundamental unit metrics. In 3 years, company A, which was focused on retention, actually earned $93 million more than company B in profit margins. On this link, you can see the calculations as well. It's an Excel, it's a Google sheet and an open sheet for all of you to refer. But you would be able to see that, how fixing retention helps all the different areas with respect to growth of any organization. Okay, so why chase retention? What is it that we as a business are trying to solve? Basically, one simple thing, which is our lifetime value of a user has to be more than the CAC, the customer acquisition cost. As long as we are able to hit this kind of an organization should be infinitely scalable. Let's say if I spend $10 to acquire a customer and I'm able to earn $12 during the lifetime of this user, infinite capital is available, infinite opportunities are available for us to grow and scale this model. So with retention, the idea is actually to fix the LTV so that we are able to provide that leeway to the organization to keep acquiring more and more users and keep scaling. Now, what are the challenges? So let's say if we are acquiring users by multiple channels, it could be paid marketing, so Google, Facebook, affiliates, it could be referrals, which means virality, it could be search, etc., etc. There are multiple channels, and here I'm kind of limiting my presentation with respect to mobile app growth, but it would fundamentally play out in a very similar way for websites and other kind of models as well. So let's say we have these different channels of acquisition, which leads to installs. Sure, that bit is taken care of. But what happens after installs? There is a possibility of these users not signing up. So let's say we are able to get signups also. Then the next challenge comes in onboarding. And here, the way I define onboarding is people actually getting the value proposition well and going to the first aha moment. That's what I call onboarding. Let's say if we are able to solve onboarding also, then what if people don't get retained? What if they are not very happy with the product or the service you're offering? Say if we are able to do that as well, then also the challenge becomes that these users need to stay happy long term. If they are not happy for a long term, as many times as they interact with your product or service, then it can still lead to churn. Therefore, the scope of this presentation is that we would be talking about all three aspects: onboarding, engagement, and fixing the churn. With this, let's quickly move on to the heart of the topic, which is retention. Of course, is hard, and it needs interventions at different points in the life cycle of the customer so that we are able to fix it. However, it should be seen as an output. It's basically retention of any organization. It's an output. The inputs are activation, engagement, and reactivation. What is activation? It's basically connecting the users to the core value proposition of the product. Engagement is to help them see the value in doing this thing over and over, so that they're able to build a habit of using our product or service. That's engagement. And just in case people drop out of the funnel, how do you get them back and rebuild the habit loop with them? So reactivation. All three things are inputs towards fixing retention. And the basic purpose is that, let's say, this is a very famous graphic designed by user on onboard.com, where the idea is that we can make people to understand the value proposition in such a way that they, after acquiring or after using my product or service, they can see themselves in a better way. Can they see that their life is going to improve in some manner when they engage with my product or service? So that is what my activation needs to get achieved. So to fix activation, usually there are four parameters or four ways in which we should be looking at activation. One, we need to understand what is the intent of the user. Why is the person coming in the first place to download your application, or why has he signed up on your website? What was the use case? What was the jobs to be done for him which he was trying to resolve? Second bit is ensuring that we as an organization understand their goals and then customizing their experience so that we are able to connect them to their goal and show them how our product helps them to reach there. Third part is we identifying what is our 7 days or 7 friends in 10 days metric. That's a very famous metric used by Facebook. How do we kind of understand what is that metric for ourselves? And then 4, how do we remove obstacles in the way to make this happen? So we will be touching all 4 areas, but before that, let me kind of go to a core problem which needs to be fixed. This is a screenshot from CleverTap of a particular organization, where we are trying to measure the cohorts of a key action. So let's say if I am Oyo, for example, my core action would be people booking a room night with me. If I am an e-commerce company, it would be how many times are people adding products to their carts, or finally placing an order with me. So depending upon what exactly what business we are into, our core action would differ. In case of Cashkaro, for example, people who are coming to Cashkaro and then exiting from Cashkaro to my partner retailer, that's the core action. After that, they would purchase, but that purchase is happening on my retailer's end. But for me, the core action is people exiting from Cashkaro to my partner retailers. So depending upon the frequency of the use case, right? Here I'm actually taking a week as a use case. But let's say if you're a gaming company, this might be daily engagement. If you're social media, this would be daily engagement. If you are probably an e-commerce company, here the core action is purchase, and that might be once in a month kind of a use case. So this time period would keep on varying. Here, just for example, we are taking weeks, and what I'm trying to kind of come to is that right after the first week 0, when the person was acquired or when the person did the first key action, now if I track that cohort week on week or day on day or month on month, depending upon my use case, we see that the sharpest decline actually happens right in the beginning itself. This basically shows that here my onboarding is off. So how do we go about fixing it? Before we actually dive into the specifics of this area, I want to cover like a general heuristic of thinking about conversion. And conversion, when applied to a new user, becomes activation. When applied to an existing user, becomes retention. When applied to a churned user, becomes reactivation. So basic framework remains the same. Just that what is the way to think about it? I just want to kind of cover a general heuristic there. So there is this formula called McLab's conversion heuristic formula, which I want to talk about. Though it is not a mathematical equation in strict sense, but a general heuristic, which gives us a sense that conversion, in this particular case, activation for us, is equal to 4 times the motivation plus 3 times the clarity of the value proposition of the product plus 2 times incentive minus friction. So there would be a friction to use your product or service. Whatever that friction is, can my incentive be big enough for users to motivate them to kind of cross that bridge and use my product? And minus 2 times anxiety. So these numbers 4, 3, 2, 2 are just an indicative of how these different parts of this equation play out. So how important is motivation? How important is clarifying the value proposition of my product or service? How important is incentive and to deal with friction? And then finally the anxiety. So if these 4 areas or these 5 areas are actually taken care of, we should be able to get good conversion. Now let us just apply this in case of activation as a problem, and we will just unfold the story in a bit. To demonstrate this, right, let me kind of talk about a very quick experiment which we did, which was for clarifying our value proposition. Now, the channels which we used here are push notifications, in-app notifications, and Typeform. Typeform is a tool to do user surveys. We were targeting the users who have signed up for the first time, and the experiment was that can we interact with them in a playful, joyful kind of a manner. So I'll show you how this experiment had actually unfolded. My first step was actually sending a push notification to the users. Here, the difference was that we actually used a human face instead of a brand logo. That was just to kind of give a sense that, just humanizing the brand. And as a metric, we have seen that our CTRs improve because human beings do connect with human beings, hence we are called social animals. So using the face of a person rather than a logo, it kind of improved our CTRs. So this notification goes out to people, they click on it, and they reach to a journey on Typeform. If you notice, you would see the same person's face here, which was there on my push notification as well. In fact, I would quickly want to take you through that journey also. So I'm sharing my screen very quickly so that I can quickly walk you through that journey itself. Give me a yes if you can see my screen now. Is yes, my screen visible, guys?
Yep.
I am assuming it is. So
yes,
let's go on.
See your screen.
It is? Great. Awesome. So the push notification leads to this Typeform where we are trying to clarify our value proposition and also trying to solve the anxiety points clubbed together. So here is this guide. Let's start together. You start. It explains how the product works. So basically solving for the value proposition. Also motivating the user at the right time by giving a personal example. What else? Clarifying the value proposition over and over again. And what points to mention here actually came from our user research. I'll cover that also in a bit. But the idea was that we understand what the core issues a user is battling with, or what are the core questions he has or she has when the person is actually interacting with the product. Understand those and then address those in my onboarding itself so that we are able to hit our activation right. So this, then what are the anxiety points? So since Cashkaro gives cashback on your shopping, people sometimes do have questions around authenticity. They want to know that if this is a real thing, how does it work, etc., etc. So those anxiety points again are addressed in a way by talking about our investor, Mr. Ratan Tata, what kind of a cashback we are given so far, what kind of partners do we work along with. So those kind of things actually help us to again build that trust with the audience. Now, what did this lead to, right? What were the results like? Basically, this is what we saw. So versus my control group, whenever we send this kind of a notification and this kind of an experiment, this kind of an explanatory journey, addressing the value proposition, trying to understand, addressing the motivation, clarifying the doubts, or taking care of the anxiety, etc., etc., we have seen that this actually brought a 32% lift in our activations. This data is statistically significant, and hence we know that this is working well. Moving on, like I was saying that there were different steps in the Typeform journey I showed. So how do you actually understand what those concerns are, what you should be addressing in your activation or onboarding process? So then it basically boils down to understanding the user requirements. What kind of users we should be talking to? Primarily 4 types. So to understand the user's intent, we talk to 4 different types of users: people who signed up, did not do anything, and just vanished. So the key questions which we want to address here are: what exactly were the expectations? What were they looking for? Were they even the right people to begin with? What kind of channels did we acquire them from, etc., etc.? Then second set of people are people who have signed up, they have engaged, but have not reached the goal yet. So what kind of questions do they have? Where do they get stuck? What are the anxiety points? What were the use cases they were trying to get solved? So these kind of questions are asked from this kind of a cohort where people engaged a bit but still did not reach the final goal. Third kind of people were people who recently completed the goal. So, and this is kind of important because these are those people who have actually crossed that threshold. So understanding what actually led them to cross that barrier, what were the things which actually almost stopped them from buying, and they took a leap of faith to try the product or our service. If we are able to understand these kind of areas well, then those can be certainly put on our onboarding process well, so that we are able to proactively resolve these questions rather than leaving them out in the open. And fourth is certainly those people who have uninstalled, people who signed up, they engaged, they interacted with us, but finally uninstalled the application or stopped using the service. In other words, basically got churned. So what were the issues there? What they wanted to see? What were the gaps, etc. So having a research process in place, either via surveys or by user interviews or via focus groups, these kind of answers actually help us to address the core problems and then design what kind of product flows would answer those questions which people have on their mind. Now I want to touch upon the next bit of activation process, which is basically meeting the users where they are at, which means whatever jobs to be done they had on their mind, whatever their goals or aspirations were with respect to our product or service, can we customize our onboarding process accordingly? So to kind of just give a gist, most organizations, most marketers, sometime in their career do make a mistake of addressing all the users with the common onboarding journey. It might work for certain kind of products and services, but usually one size doesn't fit all. Therefore, if we understand these buyer personas, if we understand what are the 4 or 5 different things people are trying to achieve via your product or service, and we design customized flows for them to really understand how each of their use cases would be resolved by my solution, this helps to build the bond very closely, and people are able to then immediately see that how my product or my service is a solution to their answer, solution to their question, right? So rather than being intellectually lazy and pushing everybody through a single funnel, the exercise of understanding the jobs to be done by every customer, and then walking them through a customized way of solving those queries is a good way to improve our onboarding experience. Now, let me come back to the next question, which is how do you figure out that core metric of 7 friends in 10 days? So, though this is a data centric exercise, and you can see all the details here on the link given, but it basically boils down to we decide what is a success metric. Like, for example, in my case, this is exits to the retailer. In an e-commerce case, it's a purchase. Let's say we decide on those success metrics, and then we aggregate data at a user level. And here the segregation can be in various ways. It could be channel level users, it could be gender, city, age, geography, etc., etc. So demographic segmentation, psychographic segmentation, or the behavioral segmentation, the way they have been using the product. So if we do that along with whatever is the success metric and compute a correlation between these two columns, we should be able to figure out what is our 7 friends in 10 days metric. For example, if I talk about Cash Karo, so we have seen that people who do 5 exits from Cash Karo to different retailers within 1 week of their joining are able to convert better, they do retain better, etc., etc. So all our efforts towards onboarding are actually geared towards making sure that most people are able to go through this exercise. Therefore, it helps. Now, coming to the fourth part, which is actually very important, is okay, I understand what my user is trying to solve. I understand what kind of onboarding paths they should be walking on. I understand what is my core metric to work around. But there are obstacles in the ways, right? So how do we address these obstacles? That's what the next part is. Here also it's a 4-step framework here. And then there could be other areas also to be fixed here. But primarily these 4 steps serve in good percentage of the cases. First one is, of course, to educate users. And that could be via product walkthroughs, some videos, tool tips, etc. And I'll quickly cover an experiment which we did there and we'll show you the results as well. Second part is enticing the users. So rather than throwing everything in one go, can we do this in chunks? Can we show the user that how their life is going to actually improve once they start engaging with my product or service? Third is how do we reduce friction? So a quick example could be can I pre-fill the forms? Can I reduce the number of choices so that, there is no choice paradox available for the user? Can I actually break the entire complex bit path into bits and pieces so that the learning curve is not that steep, etc., etc. So wherever we feel that, there's a friction, can we kind of take proactive actions to reduce that friction? And fourth, which is kind of very important, is right after the onboarding finishes, can I give them a hit of dopamine? Can I reward them in some ways so that that link of the product or service being rewarded, being rewarding, is formulated in the early stages as well. People also call this as an aha moment. So if we are able to do these 4 things during the onboarding process, our activation usually we have seen after experiment that these 4 things, whatever optimization we do here, there is translating to numbers eventually. Let me quickly take you through an experiment we did, where the idea was that let us do those product walkthroughs by educating the users when they are on our app for the first time. So how we solved that? Via an app notification. So people who have signed up and reached my homepage for the first time, we wanted to handhold them towards the reward. So this is the problem statement, and how we kind of approached it is with an in-app notification where our co-founder via a video is explaining how people can take their welcome gift. So we were not expecting this, but these are the results. The blue bar is the set of users who were exposed to that experiment, and the like 13% of those users did their first transaction in the same time period. And this green bar, they were not exposed to the experiment. There, my activation is 9.15%, which is a 46% uplift in activations just by walking people through, hand holding them at the stage where they do get confused. Okay, this kind of wraps up my part on activation. Now let's go deeper on the engagement piece, right? Here, like I was saying earlier, activation is basically getting people to get that initial wow, that initial understanding of the value proposition. And engagement is basically about building that habit loop. How do you get people to come over and over again and re-engage with you so that your product or service is now part of their lives? This basically is again a 4-step framework where we are saying that we either add use cases. So think about cab services, right? Uber or Ola, they actually started as an airport cab first, which is basically once in a few months kind of a use case. Then they went to solving for drunk driving, so once in a week kind of a use case when people are partying over the weekend. Then eventually to office commute, which is a daily kind of a use case. So adding use cases certainly improves engagement and hence helps in habit formation. Second part of the framework is increasing the intensity of each use case. For example, if I am YouTube, can I get people to stay with me for longer? How do I solve that? I give you recommendations based on the video you have actually watched. I create playlists. I incentivize users to, I incentivize content creators to create, videos in succession so that I am able to retain people with me for a longer time. Hence, show more ads, make more revenue. Similarly, if the next bit here is, can I increase the frequency of my current use case? So this is slightly different from adding more use cases. Here I'm talking about the same use case, can I increase the frequency? So think about Zomato, for example. Earlier, like the notifications were available all throughout the day, but then they started doing notifications strategically at the time of lunch hours or dinner hours or even breakfast at times on the weekends. So basically ordering food, that's the use case. I can increase the frequency by now pitching about different kind of food items you eat during different times of the day and customize those notifications depending upon your previous behavior. So certainly helps there. And fourth bit, of course, is can I increase the feature usage? So as a company, you might have 10 features. Can be, usually like Pareto applies. So 20% of the product usually gives 80% of the benefit here as well. But there are other features as well. So if we can get people to, start engaging with other parts also, it certainly helps in retention. So think about LinkedIn, for example. It was not, videos are not native to LinkedIn, but they eventually started doing that. Facebook started doing Reels, blatantly copying TikTok. But yeah, help them improve the engagement for sure. So 4 things: adding use cases, increasing intensity of every use case, increasing the current use case frequency, and increasing the feature usage. These 4 things help to fix engagement. And then there are 3 additional points to this, which is basically, can I refine my current features? Can I make them easier to understand? Can I expose users to those features, time to time strategically? So that is 1. 2, building retention hooks. So here, can you build a loyalty program? Here, the triggers can be notifications, emails, etc. And third bit is improving the product quality in general. Here also, we did an experiment where I'm going to cover the first bit where, refining current features. let me kind of give you a glimpse. So this screen which you see right now is called a store page. Basically, the way Cashguru works is we are partners with over 1,500 e-commerce websites, big and small. So you come Cashguru, you click on the link, you are redirected to my partner retailer. You shop there. I get a commission out of that. I keep a small cut, pass on rest of the benefit to you as cashback. So we have these store pages for different retailers. And we also have something called deal cards, which is this. This is nothing but a different form of an offer. We actually saw both of these features were available in the product historically also. But when we saw our data, we figured out that people are engaging with deal cards better, probably because of the hero image. So all we started doing was that this property was given more visibility on our product rather than the store pages. Results 12.5% better conversion here. Therefore, just an example of how we can look into the current features itself. Wherever we feel that the engagement is higher, can we get those parts out in open in front of the users more and more? So just an example of how to go about it. Now I also want to cover the hand-holding bit a little better. While we talked about it from an activation point of view as well, I also want to talk about how we can handhold people who have already converted and now you want to engage them or re-engage them. So here is an example of an email which we actually send across once a user places a first order via Cashguru, which means once the activation has happened. There we were trying to explain how the service works so that a buyer does not have any remorse. And that's a natural phenomenon. Once you spend money, all of us go through that slide off feeling of parting away with the money, right? And that buyer remorse needs to be addressed. So once an order gets placed, we basically send an automated sequence of emails and notifications so that we are able to guide people that, okay, this is how it is going to work. And these kind of responses, we have seen them happening over and over, where people have actually come back. And let me just quote this. Here, the user is saying that this would probably be my first time replying to a company out of all the companies that have provided me a service of any kind, and that too in a positive manner. So a lot of appreciation. People do realize that the company is actually putting in efforts to help them use their product better. People do recognize that, and you do get rewarded for that in terms of better retention. Let me also give another example of building another retention hook. It's just a communication channel, but it helped us as well. So the objective was that while we send across push notifications, emails, etc., and a lot of companies do that anyway, but there is an onslaught of such notifications. Can we try something different? Can we break the clutter? So we came up with an idea of trying WhatsApp bot. And the idea was that, let's reach out to those people who have lapsed after the initial engagement. So we try some sort of a conversational marketing flow. To do this, we started like the entry of, getting these people to start that conversation with us was via different triggers, including notifications. And I'm sharing one of the examples here, where, again, we are using WhatsApp's icon here on our notifications. We are using the same person's image and graphics. I'll just show that to you in a minute, so that the initial connect still gets stronger, right? I'll show you how this plays out. So somebody clicks on that notification is actually led to a WhatsApp bot. There, a message is pre-populated, and the user just hits the send button. After that, this bot starts. And it is done in an, because the kind of audience we were dealing with here was of a specific nature. So the kind of language used on the WhatsApp bot, the kind of imagery used here, it's done in a playful, joyful manner so that we are able to engage with the audience and just break the clutter. Let me show you how this actually panned out for us. Our reach changed from 40% 40% was our reach on push notifications. That changed to 85% because 85% of the users in the country, they do have WhatsApp installed, especially people who are using e-commerce services. This is what we have figured out after doing this for months together. Therefore, a 90% improvement just in the reach itself. And in terms of conversion, which used to be 1.5%, there's a 10x uplift. So massive, massive delta here. So this was done in a hacky manner, and we got a notification from WhatsApp saying that, hey, you're sending these repeated notifications over and over, so change that. But the experiment actually proved, that it is worth going down this route. So as of now, we are exploring official integration with WhatsApp and those kind of things. Cool. Now I want to address the last part, which usually gets missed from growth efforts quite often, which is improving the product. So a lot of marketers actually, stay focused on communications, campaigns, incentivizing users, etc. But those things do help to get a temporary high. If we want to fix retention, it basically boils down to improving the quality of the product as well as your service. So how to even think about it, right? Let's say if you need little change in the product and the performance is good, only then you optimize your product. Else, if the performance is good but the change we need is a lot, we redesign. If the product is bad, the change need is little, we anyways redesign because the product is bad. And if the performance is bad, changes needed are a lot, then it is imperative that we redesign. So convincing people in the organization to invest into improving the product and doing those experiments is extremely important to fix retention in the long-term scenario. I am not picking up reaching out to the churned users and getting them back again, because I fundamentally believe that if the onboarding was done well and we were able to build a habit loop well, then churn can be minimal. And of course, no matter what, there would be some churn for sure. However, what we need to take care at that time, again, is trying to understand what were the issues people were trying to solve. Were we as a company able to address those? If not, how can we re-engage to solve those core concerns? If we are able to deliver that value to people right in time, they would come back. So age-old principle, whatever you're doing, do so well that people want to see it again and want to bring their friends as well. This, by the way, reminds me of NPS, great indicator of how people are engaging with you. Are they happy about it or not? So another practice which we follow is sending an NPS survey every fortnight and then comparing the results with last time, so that we know that we are able to make significant progress on those core asks or not. With that, I open the floor for any questions. I hope I was able to help. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yatin. I think that was a comprehensive masterclass on how our audience can start the retention journey and a lot of key takeaways. Although we've gone over time, I think I'll take a couple of questions. A lot of our audience has some questions related to the formula that you shared, something to do with which element of those of the formula has a more important role, and is there any explanation on how we came up with this formula?
Sure. Okay. Let me just go back to that slide quickly and come up with that.
I'll do that.
So, see, one important thing for us to understand is that this is not an exact mathematical formula. It's basically years of research done by several conversion experts, and it's just an indicated heuristic, and that's what I was kind of trying to come to also. See, solving for motivation of the user, it's kind of difficult. People are either motivated about using your service or they are not. However, if the value proposition is not clear enough, then leading to this motivation also becomes extremely difficult. Therefore, as a marketer or as a product person, what we need to solve for sure, and like what according to me takes super high precedence over everything is value proposition, clarity of the value proposition. What is it that I do, and how do I make your life better? If we are able to hammer that point well, rest of the things are taken care of automatically. Well, not automatically. We do need to address them at some point in time for sure. But it starts from addressing the value proposition bit, to begin with. Second part, in my opinion, is basically fixing the anxiety points. Every time when somebody is interacting with your product or solution, there are certain unsaid questions which people have on their mind. There are doubts. They might feel that what you are presenting as a solution might not be of any use to them. So if we are able to address those questions head on, right? People feel that the organization has been able to understand what my concerns are, and those concerns are addressed. Then there is more trust in whatever you're doing. So it certainly helps to get them to move to the next step. Then last, and this is my personal opinion, last comes the incentives. Unfortunately, a lot of us do focus on incentives a lot. However, until and unless the value proposition is clear, until and unless those anxiety points are taken care of, this bit does not really work. Incentives are there just to overcome the friction. There might be something off in the product, or there might be an effort needed from the user to do a certain action to use your product or service. To get that action to happen, incentive is a thing which can help. However, until and unless these two parts are sorted, incentives won't do much good. So to answer the question precisely, value proposition, then addressing the anxiety, and then incentives. This is what I feel, and exactly in this order.
Great. Thank you, Yatin. I think that was really helpful. And thanks again for joining us today. Our audience really loved the session. And Manish, if you're around, thank you for joining us as well. And lastly, but not the least, a huge thanks to our audience for joining us today. But Reimagine Growth is not over. We're just halfway done. Join us back tomorrow for another insightful session. We have experts from Rocketium and VWO who are joining us tomorrow for a masterclass on new growth opportunities, where we'll cover conversion rate optimization and creative automation. So see you there tomorrow. Join back again. Thanks.